Now I'd like to move on to Josh Callaghan. Josh is the CEO of Little Hinges in Australia, and he's going to talk about, once again, we're on this whole topic of technology, the richness of 3D property data and how it can serve marketplaces. So, Freudian slip. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I might just do a little bit of an introduction to myself, and I do this simply because in the world of ChatGPT and a whole lot of generic information out there and content, it's really easy, I guess, for people to come up on stage and just talk about, generic BS that may not actually be relevant. I've been working with data for a lot of years now, probably over 15 years ago, I think it was, probably showing my age. I was managing a multi-billion-dollar fixed interest portfolio, and that's where I first got introduced to this concept of how data can enable business. And so we built an elasticity model that allowed us to very accurately price and grow that fixed interest portfolio. I then moved on to build what's now Australia's largest wealth management CRM or retail stockbroking CRM, combining a whole lot of stuff together to create a customer-centric view. But where I guess I got, and during that time also a bunch of algorithmic trading engines and that sort of stuff. But it was when I met my now best mate and also co-founder, Michael York, who I'll refer to as Yorkie from here on in because I never call him Michael. I met him at a property data business that we're working for that's now part of Dye & Durham, which many of you in the room will be aware of. And he sort of gave me the challenge, said, well, why don't we build some algorithmic betting engines, which is great. I love being able to use data to make money. And so we both set about building these algorithmic betting engines, but we went about it a very different way. He went top down, and so he started with the model and trying to understand how do I create an accurate betting engine that I can rely on and can be consistent. And then he went out to the various markets and places in the world to try and find where the data sets existed that could actually feed that engine. The only place that he could actually run that model was Victorian greyhound racing. And so his model was entirely Victorian greyhound racing. Me, on the other hand, I thought, well, I want to go large and big and wide, and I want to be able to have hundreds of bets going every weekend. And so why wouldn't I then look for what's the common data set that exists across a whole lot of race meets, regardless of where you are in the world. So things like your recent results and barrier drawing and all that sort of stuff. And then I'll just build a model out of that to work out, well, what are the correlations and causations to create my betting algorithm. For every dollar that Yorkie's algorithm made, I was losing about $2. And the simple reason was because I was using the data that was available in front of me, not the data that actually matters, not the stuff that actually creates a meaningful change in the outcome. About 6 years ago, Yorkie was doing some work over in the US with LinkedIn and rang me up and said, hey, this iBuyer thing's really interesting. What can we do about generating or creating an algorithmic buying engine here in Australia or over in Australia? And having had that experience of betting, we looked in through the data that was available in the Australian market at least, and very quickly realised there's no way of accurately valuing property. There's a whole bunch of inferred data, there's a whole bunch of really limited data sets that look at things like what the outside of the house, what lot size it's on, historical sales, all that sort of stuff, but it could never get us anywhere that we could actually move with confidence. That wasn't the start of Little Hinges, but it was the inspiration into the way in which we've now built it, but I'll unpack that more in a second. Today I want to talk about how 3D virtual tours and audience data sets impact search tools, automated valuation models, but then predominantly want to talk about personalisation. Just a tiny bit about Little Hinges. We're only 3 years old. We launched our platform 2 years ago. We've been actively trying to build that out since then. A little bit about how the platform operates, because I don't intend to do a pitch today. This is much more about the actual value of the data. But the way that it works is our product basically wraps a virtual tour. A virtual tour, as you'll all know, I don't need to tell you about that, is a highly rich and deep value creation tool as part of the sales transaction of property or leasing transaction of property, and it's where people are highly qualified. So you're only talking to highly qualified people at the point of virtual tours. Across those 5 million people that have been through the platform in the last couple of years, the average time that they spend in virtual tour is 3.5 minutes, which the only things that get more digital engagement is online gaming and online gambling. We've got a product, audience product, allows you to connect anything from your CRM forms, all that sort of stuff, all the way through to the audience of those virtual tours, such as if you want to make an offer, if you want to apply, if you want to do behavioral-based prompts to collect data on those users. Our data studio brings it all together and connects it with the virtual tour specific data sets, and this is the big part that was missing for us. The audience data is all just a bonus. It was the internal data sets of the property that made it almost impossible to value a property, because we all know when you walk into a house and it's got beautiful big high ceilings and certain feature sets that create value, we all know that makes a massive difference in what that property will sell for versus similar properties of size and scale. We then, as you'd expect, run it all out into an API. This is just an example of one where, so we get it right down to a bedroom. This is a bedroom. We'll tell you how big the bedroom is. We'll tell you about its percentage of the entire floor plate, its window count, what coverings are on the windows, all that sort of stuff. So a data set that's actually really rich. You can actually get a insurance quote directly off that set. But talking about search tools, this is my family. So I've got an 8-year-old and 4-year-old triplets and a dog. And so when we go into the market to look for property, we've got very unique needs. And there's certain houses that just aren't going to work for us. We need larger central living areas. We need a larger kitchen. We need at least medium-sized bedrooms. None of these data sets currently exist in any of the search tools that I've found, at least around the world. What that means is that you're asking me as the user to do all of the manual matching of property. So you build my set of investable, my investable universe, as we'd call it in the equities world. You'd build my investable universe of maybe a suburb, maybe a land size. Build size is certainly not is shaky at best in the data sets. And then maybe a couple of features like pools or something like that, number of bathrooms, number of bedrooms. But then that's it. It's on me then to sort through the 365 properties that match that criteria. Every morning I get served another email that says, here, there's more properties that match your criteria. Again, only to get me into now having to search through those and see whether they actually meet what I want. And that's before I even get to a physical inspection and it looks nothing like the photos. And so a whole other issue. But so that's search tools. I'll talk about that more in a sec. Automated valuation models, and you can ignore the numbers, that's just me copying and pasting in Canva and not knowing what I'm doing. Automated valuation models, though, as we know, sit across the entire spectrum of and serve all the component pieces of the market. But it's an important part in terms of matching as well. Because right now what happens is, the best price that we sort of get out there and the way that we match, if we're talking faceted searches and those sort of things, is based on what the agent tells us it's going to sell for, perhaps, which, again, is formulated off an AVM that doesn't have any internal data sets and is trying to infer price. But then that whole thing, so it's not at the point until the contract settles that we know actually what it was worth and what people were paid for. It's all a big mystery through there. And one of the reasons it's a big mystery is because we haven't been able to map things back to real data sets and the things that really matter, and quantify the internals of a property. At the moment, certainly in Australia, and it's the same in other industries, other parts of the world as well, you've got 2 houses that are 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and they'll give me an estimated value with a $200,000 range. And although there's not much property you can buy in that range anymore in Australia, but they'll give me an estimated value with a $200,000 range. The problem is that inside that property, the floor plates are entirely different, and there's no way that you can apply the same per square metre price of open plan living as you can on bedroom number 3. And so what happens is we end up, assigning, inferring, estimating these average prices that go into a square meterage of a floor plate that isn't actually accurate the vast majority of the time, certainly not a verified floor plate, getting it scraped off 2D floor plans being hand-drawn by people in other parts of the world, and then we're creating a high confidence estimation of the property price, which in no way reflects what it actually sells for. What's actually really interesting about these models is that they go to the extent of saying they've got a high level of confidence, and they end with numbers like 287, which if you've ever actually seen sales prices, they don't end in sevens. And so this is all part of, I guess, what is undermining the ability for us to create highly personalized experiences in marketplaces and be able to serve buyers and renters and investors where they want. Property is the last trillion-dollar asset class to be digitized. When I went, building models in equities, we can tell you how much fuel a shipping company used in the prior month. In property, I can't even tell you how big the bedroom is. And so the digitization of this asset class is what enables the personalization that is basically the future of marketplaces, the future of all experiences. And in fact, I only say the future because I guess the property industry is a fair way behind. It already exists in everything that we do. You look at the NASDAQ top 10 companies, and the vast majority of them, their competitive advantage is personalization. I'd go as far as to say, that if your marketplace or if your website doesn't have a dedicated stream to personalization, then there's probably very good news. And the good news is that the major leaders and people involved in every major retail e-com site that's been developed over the last 20 years, they all agree that personalization initiatives were the biggest single contributors to their bottom line and their growth. A McKinsey report from a couple of years ago showed that 76%, well, they're all 70%, so I won't bother saying them, over 70% will purchase from a company that has personalization, will repurchase from a company that has personalization, will recommend a company that has personalization. And the reason is simple, it's trust. So personalization is the thing that builds trust in the people that are transacting with your platform. If you're bringing me properties that are only relevant to me, that are right in my ballpark, then the trust that I have in you, you've taken the extra step to be able to recommend, to provide a personal service, to come and meet me where I am. It's the classic old sort of consulting selling, right? Where you ask a bunch of questions so that they feel like whatever the answer is that comes next or whatever your solution is matches their needs. It's exactly the same but in a digital form. And so what that means though is it's more than just that I'm going to transact with you. It's that buys you so much more ability to go to adjacent products and services and talk about, so now that you know me and you've made the effort to understand my needs, if you then want to talk to me about, here's some finance that might be of interest, here's some insurance that might be of interest, here's a conveyance that might be of interest, I feel like you know me, you've built that trust, and that's the massive key to personalization and why it's so critical for marketplaces and online sites. The good thing is digital natives, that same report showed that digital native businesses have the highest improvement in all their metrics as a result of introducing high levels of personalization, over 25%. Here's how I think about, data maturity and the level of personalization and how each of these things build on each other for marketplaces, particularly in property. It all starts at that basic level of faceted search tools, matching, all that sort of stuff, and just giving me the tools that I can actually search for the things that I want, that are relevant to me, that are important for my family and my needs. That then allows us to go to behavioral profiling, because all of a sudden, the best behavioral profiling we have, right, people look through listings and we go, cool, well, they've looked at 6 listings, now they looked at 10 listings, now they looked at 50 listings, maybe they're in market. Maybe they're not. Maybe you've served them 50 pieces of junk that they can't buy because it has no match to them, but they've had to go through each of them to try and assess whether it's actually the right product for them. It allows for proper behavioral profiling because you can actually match it up with what the feature sets of those properties are into their behaviors. That then allows for predictive and propensity modeling. And you can't skip those to get to propensity modeling. Propensity modeling, propensity modeling obviously in e-com is a massive thing. But you've got to remember, e-com have all the data. They know what all the product specifications and the inputs are. They know everything about that value chain, and so they can do propensity modeling off it because they can match at a much deeper level. We can't do that in property yet, and that's simply because we literally don't know what our inventory is. We don't see inside the house. And then that allows for the seamless transaction connectivity of a whole bunch of stuff. AVM serves all parts of that, which is why that's an important part of the conversation, because even when it comes to behavioral profiling, what the agent might think it's worth versus what it's actually worth, what we know it's worth, will be two different things. And so it allows us to understand actually what that behavior is relevant to in terms of pricing. Finally, I guess, what all of this leads to is the critical nature of personalization. It's something that, in our observation of the industry, it's something that we are very much at just first principles at the moment. There's a whole lot more that can be done. The two things that need to happen, though, one is, and I think Malcolm said it earlier, that one of the things that had come true was the adoption of virtual tours. I wish it was a lot more. I think it's just passed through. In fact, Simon, I saw a report from you, I think it was last year, showing that virtual tours had just moved through the 10% mark globally in terms of listings, over the 200 million listings that were looked at. And so it's still got a long way to go. It's important that those virtual tours are actually 3D virtual tours and we can extract data from it and create those valuable data sets. And then it's about making that available and embedding it into our platforms, into our entire environments end to end, to be able to create highly personalized, high value interactions for our customers. Thank you.
Josh, thanks for that. Can we bring up the questions? If possible, fantastic. We're going to start with a couple here. Can virtual reality get big if it's not actively promoted by the dominant platform?
It's a great question, because what we know is that consumers, buyers and renters, absolutely demand it. They want it. We see it in their behavioural patterns. In fact, we see it even out of REA themselves. Shared some stats maybe about a year ago that showed that listings that had a virtual tour on them had a 400% increase in engagement compared to those without. So we know that it's what consumers want. The big challenge is probably the intermediate, which is the agent. I think the platforms can play a part. It's partly what we're trying to do here with our platform that sits around it for the data extraction is, well, for the platforms to play a part, we need to be able to, or the portals to play a part, we need to be able to create value for them. And so I think that's the nut that we're really probably likely to crack, is that we can get the portals to be promoting it because they're actually getting value out of it.
Okay. Isn't personalization most useful when consumers have a large amount of choices to sift through? And is that the case with property?
Yeah, there's it's a good question. One of the challenges with personalization in property, because it's not a commoditized asset, one of the challenges with personalization in property is that if I get all the way down such a narrow banded search that I get no results for that, it's actually no different to when you think about your purchase processes on a car or anything else, right? The consumers are behaviorally, we know the behavior of then having to increase the scope of that search or compromise our search parameters in order to get more and more in that universe. I think what happens though is it's no different to what we see in e-com, Amazon, that sort of stuff. If I type in a highly specific search term in Amazon and it comes up with nothing, then I'm able to be matched in with some other products that might suit or might be similar to that. And so it comes back to the matching, I guess, and being able to understand what those consumers are actually looking for.
Okay. What more can customers get from you rather than just Matterport directly, and what's the price difference?
What more do customers get from you rather than... Oh, sure. A couple of things. So like I said, this wasn't going to be a pitch, but thank you for asking. So our audience product basically allows you to get a whole lot more depth in terms of the consumer data and usage, as well as interaction with the consumer. So you get to do things like, behavioral prompts of if someone's come back a couple of times into your virtual tour and has spent more than 5 minutes in the property, you can behaviorally, prompt them to, would you like to put an expression of interest in? Would you like to talk to such and such? Would you like to download a property report? Whatever it is. And so it's that whole interface that allows us to personalize that experience. But further to that, it's also a whole verified data set. So we've got all of the internal schematics, which come directly from, say, Matterport, if Matterport were the virtual tour provider. We've got all the internal schematics. But then the extraction of the images from there, the AI to then infer things like condition of property and call out key features, all mapped into a particular part of the property, and then mapped to an address is the big benefit. Matterport have 8.5 million models now. We're actually one of their largest clients globally. They've got 8.5 million models at the moment, but they have no addresses for them. They don't know where they are. They can tell you a whole lot about the internals of this property, but can't tell you where it is or how it's used or any of that sort of stuff. And so there's a lot of additional value that's created there. Yeah.
Okay, can you generate energy efficiency ratings?
Yeah, so we are actively discussing that at the moment. In Australia, we've got, so outside of the platform, our platform is our global proposition. It's operating in over 20 countries. In Australia, we've also built a capture business, which is Australia's largest virtual tours business, bigger than our next 5 competitors combined. Because we're sending people out to property, because there is a couple of things, particularly some external character points that you need for energy efficiency, because we're sending them out to the property, it does allow us to do the manual data collection to create an energy efficiency rating, maybe a NATAS or something like that. But we're just sort of early stages there. I think it's a huge opportunity though, because obviously it'll probably be mandated at some point that you have to sell with a energy rating of some type.
Okay. Bed size, besides sizes and distances, what other data can you extract from the scan?
So we can do things like right down to, say, window coverings, floor coverings, some of the things that you need for depreciation schedules, as an example, for investors. We can do things like count the number of downlights, whether it's ceiling fans, ducted air conditioning, or split systems, and things like being able to map out adjacent facilities that is, sounds benign, but is actually really valuable in terms of being able to infer data. If there's a bedroom that has an ensuite, it's a very different value on a per square meter basis than a bedroom without. And so we're able to extract some of those things. What our audience product does though is then also overlay all the behavioral insights. Because when people go through a virtual tour, they do basically the same thing they do in real life. If they're interested in kitchens, they'll go straight to the kitchen and they'll look and they'll stand around there for ages and measure up things. If people are into bedrooms, they'll go and look at that. And so we're able to map all of that behavioral data into those particular parts of the property, bedrooms, bathrooms, whatever, as well.
Okay. Most agents don't use 3D tours because they want to meet the buyers and influence the whole process. How do you tackle this issue?
Yeah, it's 100% right. So so it's because they want to meet them. It's a control thing. It's a fear that technology is coming to replace them. It's actually all the same resistance that we saw 20 years ago in bricks and mortar retail as to why would I have a website with my products on there, because then no one's ever going to come to the store and our business blows up and etc. Look, the way that we're tackling it is by basically trying to create more and more value for the individual agents, and the virtual tour part just becomes all wrapped up into the same proposition. So we do, and through our platform as well, we do a full suite of products that can come out of the virtual tour, like obviously your 2D floor plans, your photos, a video. We can use ChatGPT type products now to create copy as well. So that's how we're tackling it. It is a big challenge. What we see in Australia is that about 30% of in-market buyers are from interstate or overseas, from where the actual property address is. And so basically it's just, good agents who actually want to bring in competitive bidding and people that are interested in the property. We need to demonstrate to them the value in having a virtual tour and how that serves. There is one interesting agent, sorry, this fell off, so I might be going in and out. There is one interesting agent in Brisbane, in Gold Coast, sorry, a really prominent one called Michael Callaghan, Property. And so the way that he uses virtual tours is he doesn't put them up on property portals and that sort of stuff. He uses them as the first point of qualification of any leads that come into his process. So if someone types in an inquiry, it goes through to their CRM. Their CRM automatically sends them out, hey, thanks for your inquiry. Michael will come back to you. In the meantime, why don't you have a look through? And then Michael gets all that data in the background to say, this inquiry subsequently went and spent 35 minutes in the virtual tour, went to these parts of the house, and so on and so forth. And so it's agent. There's just a bunch of ways that we need to try and create that product market fit so that agents will adopt it at scale.
Josh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon.
Love what you're doing.
Cheers.
Excellent. Thank you.